Your RV feels like home, but legally, it's not. Under US law, it's a vehicle first, and that means your castle can be searched anytime for 15 very real reasons. No judgment, no paperwork, no warning. If you thought closing your door kept you safe, think again. This is the dark side of RV life no one talks about. Your recreational vehicle occupies a unique position in American law. While it feels like home, police may treat it differently depending on specific circumstances. Officers can search your RV without a warrant if they have probable cause, a legal standard requiring reasonable belief that criminal activity is occurring. This threshold is surprisingly low. Observable signs like unusual odors, visible items, or anxious demeanor during routine stops may justify immediate inspection. What catches many travelers off guard is how location dramatically affects your rights. Rolling down the highway, your RV falls under vehicle regulations, giving officers broader search authority. Settled at a campsite with utilities connected, courts often recognize it as temporary housing, triggering stronger privacy protections similar to traditional residences. The situation becomes even more complex with marijuana legalization. Despite state laws permitting recreational use, the scent alone can still authorize searches in numerous jurisdictions. This contradiction has sparked ongoing legal debates nationwide, with RV owners challenging whether their mobile living spaces deserve residential safeguards. Understanding these distinctions proves essential for anyone embracing the RV lifestyle. Knowledge of when your vehicle transforms into a protected dwelling could make all the difference during unexpected encounters with law enforcement officials. Most recreational vehicle owners underestimate how much legal exposure comes from simple visibility. The plain view doctrine grants officers remarkable authority based solely on what they observe from legitimate vantage points. This legal principle emerged from landmark Supreme Court decisions, including Harris v. United States and Coolidge v. New Hampshire during the late 1960s and early 1970s. These rulings established a straightforward yet far-reaching standard. Any incriminating evidence visible to officers performing lawful duties becomes immediately actionable. No judicial approval required. Consider how this applies to recreational vehicle living. Officers conducting routine traffic stops or wellness checks can legally observe anything within their sight line. Your dashboard display, countertop items, or belongings visible through partially open doorways. That innocent-looking beer can on your table or prescription bottle sitting out might trigger questions leading to comprehensive vehicle inspection. The implications extend beyond obvious contraband. Even seemingly innocent items gain significance when viewed through law enforcement training and experience. A visible knife handle, unusual packaging, or certain accessories could prompt further investigation based entirely on that initial observation. Protection comes through awareness and prevention. Before settling at rest areas or campgrounds, consider what remains visible from external viewpoints. Your recreational vehicle's windows and open spaces create numerous observation angles that transform private spaces into public display under this enduring legal framework. The simplest path into your recreational vehicle requires nothing more than your verbal agreement. Officers routinely request permission to inspect RVs, and surprisingly, most travelers comply without realizing they're waiving constitutional protections entirely. Research reveals a striking pattern. Over 85% of individuals consent when authorities make polite requests during encounters. This compliance often stems from psychological pressure rather than legal obligation. Phrases like, "Mind if I take a quick look?" sound casual, yet carry significant legal weight once you agree. That single moment of approval transforms your protected space into an open investigation site. Understanding the permanence of consent proves crucial. Unlike other decisions you might reconsider, withdrawing permission mid-search holds no legal standing. Once authorized, officers can complete their inspection regardless of your changing comfort level or discovered concerns about the process. Courts interpret voluntary consent broadly, rarely siding with citizens who claim they felt pressured unless coercion was explicit and documented. Subtle influence, authoritative tone, or implied consequences typically don't qualify as forcing compliance under legal standards. The distinction matters profoundly. Agreeing to a search isn't mere cooperation or helpfulness. It's formal authorization that strips away Fourth Amendment safeguards. Recognizing this power shift before responding to search requests protects your rights while maintaining respectful interactions with law enforcement personnel. An arrest inside or near your recreational vehicle triggers immediate search authority that extends far beyond the detained individual. Officers can inspect surrounding areas without obtaining judicial permission, a power rooted in officer safety concerns and evidence preservation needs. The legal foundation traces back to Chamel v. California, a 1969 Supreme Court decision establishing the arm's reach principle. This ruling permits law enforcement to examine any space where arrestees could potentially access weapons or destroy incriminating materials. The standard focuses on immediate accessibility rather than actual intent. Recreational vehicle owners face unique vulnerabilities under this doctrine. Compact models like Class B vans or conversion vehicles place virtually all belongings within that legally defined reachable zone. Your passenger's arrest during a routine stop suddenly authorizes inspection of driver controls, storage compartments, and living quarters, essentially your entire mobile residence. The consequences multiply quickly. Initial searches following arrests often lead to comprehensive vehicle inventories conducted at impound facilities or station parking areas. What begins as one person's legal problem rapidly becomes everyone's privacy concern. This reality challenges common assumptions about individual accountability. Many travelers believe arrests only impact those facing charges, yet the legal ripple effects penetrate shared living spaces completely. Understanding these search powers helps RV communities recognize how interconnected their legal exposures truly become during law enforcement encounters. A Supreme Court decision from 1925 created one of the most significant search law exemptions affecting modern RV travelers. This landmark ruling established that automobile mobility justifies warrantless searches when officers possess probable cause, reasoning that vehicles could vanish before judicial authorization arrived. This century-old principle places RV travelers in precarious legal territory. Your mobile dwelling transforms between two distinct legal categories depending entirely on circumstantial factors. Rolling down interstates or pausing at rest stops, authorities classify your unit as a standard motor vehicle, applying the same expedited search powers used for sedans and trucks. The classification shift occurs without input or awareness. One moment, you're simply traveling. The next, your living quarters become subject to warrantless inspection based solely on reasonable suspicion. Officers need only articulate believable grounds for suspecting criminal activity. No judicial oversight required during these encounters. Permanent campground installations tell a different story. Recreational vehicles connected to utilities, stabilized with leveling systems, and established at designated sites often receive residential privacy protections. Courts recognize these setups as temporary dwellings rather than transit equipment. Litigation outcomes across jurisdictions reveal inconsistent standards. Judges examine specific details, tire chocks, utility hookups, extended stay duration, and operational readiness. These seemingly minor factors determine whether your Fourth Amendment protections strengthen or dissolve entirely during law enforcement interactions. Emergency situations grant law enforcement extraordinary authority to enter recreational vehicles without judicial approval. This legal doctrine recognizes that certain scenarios demand immediate action, where waiting for warrants could cost lives or allow critical evidence destruction. The circumstances triggering this exception include active fires, distress calls, gunshot sounds, or dangerous gas leaks emanating from your unit. During these moments, constitutional privacy protections yield to urgent public safety needs. Officers can force entry legally, acting on their assessment that delay creates unacceptable risk. Courts interpret qualifying emergencies broadly. Visual observations of unconscious individuals through windows or muffled distress sounds have justified forced entries in numerous cases. A notable 2018 ruling upheld warrantless RV entry, where officers suspected someone was experiencing a drug overdose, reasoning that life preservation outweighed privacy concerns. The complications extend beyond initial entry. Once inside under exigent circumstances, anything visible becomes legally observable under the plain view doctrine. Evidence discovered during life-saving efforts remains admissible in court, even though the original entry purpose wasn't criminal investigation. This framework operates on split-second decision-making rather than deliberate judicial review. Law enforcement training emphasizes rapid response when situations appear critical, leaving little room for procedural delays. Understanding this exception helps RV communities recognize how quickly perceived emergencies can transform private spaces into lawful search zones. Law enforcement officers perform roles extending beyond criminal investigation, and the community caretaking doctrine formalizes this broader responsibility. This principle grants authorities power to enter recreational vehicles without warrants when they reasonably believe someone requires assistance or faces potential harm. The foundation emerged from Katie v. Dombrowski in 1973, establishing that police duties include helping stranded travelers and conducting safety checks on seemingly troubled individuals. Unlike other search exceptions requiring criminal suspicion, this doctrine operates purely on welfare concerns. No probable cause necessary. Recreational vehicle scenarios frequently trigger these interventions. Generators running continuously for extended periods, partially open doors at rest areas, or reports of unresponsive occupants can prompt officers to investigate whether assistance is needed. Heavily condensed windows or other signs suggesting unusual conditions inside may raise legitimate safety questions in law enforcement minds. Recent Supreme Court rulings in 2021 restricted community caretaking applications for traditional residences, strengthening homeowner protections significantly. However, vehicles and RVs parked in public locations remain subject to this exception, maintaining officers' authority to perform welfare checks without judicial oversight. The transformation from concern to consequence happens quickly. Officers entering with genuine caretaking intentions who observe illegal items can immediately shift from helpers to investigators. That initial welfare-motivated entry provides lawful presence, making any discovered evidence admissible under established legal frameworks. Customs and Border Protection operates under rules that fundamentally differ from standard law enforcement procedures. Federal regulations grant CBP agents authority to conduct warrantless vehicle stops and searches within 100 miles of any international boundary or coastal area, a zone encompassing roughly 2/3 of America's population. This expansive jurisdiction includes 9 entire states and extends into major metropolitan areas like San Diego, Detroit, El Paso, and Chicago. Recreational vehicle travelers frequently enter this zone without realizing their constitutional protections have diminished significantly. The legal threshold for searches drops dramatically within these areas. Agents need only reasonable suspicion rather than full probable cause to inspect your RV during immigration checks or secondary screenings. Fixed checkpoints throughout Arizona, Texas, and California process thousands of vehicles daily, operating continuously without judicial oversight. Drug detection canines add another layer of inspection authority. Courts classify external dog sniffs as non-intrusive procedures rather than actual searches, meaning agents can deploy them freely around your recreational vehicle without triggering Fourth Amendment protections. Distance from physical borders matters less than most assume. Operating anywhere within that invisible 100-mile perimeter subjects travelers to random questioning and visual inspections. The constitutional protections many Americans consider guaranteed weaken considerably once you unknowingly cross into this federally designated enforcement zone, creating legal vulnerabilities that catch unprepared RV communities completely off guard. Having someone under criminal justice supervision inside your recreational vehicle fundamentally alters everyone's legal protections. Individuals on parole or probation carry reduced privacy expectations that extend to shared living spaces, granting authorities warrantless search powers over areas they can access. The legal framework operates on a simple principle. Supervised individuals accept diminished constitutional rights as conditions of their release. Officers conducting searches of parolees' belongings don't require probable cause, consent, or judicial approval. Their supervision status provides sufficient justification. Sampson v. California established in 2006 that suspicionless parolee searches remain constitutional when conducted reasonably. This Supreme Court precedent continues governing law enforcement interactions nationwide, affecting countless travelers unaware of its implications. Shared recreational vehicle spaces create particularly complex situations. Your traveling companion's probation status can authorize searches of common areas, storage compartments, and potentially your personal possessions if officers determine the supervised individual had access. The relationship between vehicle owners and passengers becomes legally irrelevant once supervision conditions apply. Written consent requirements compound these vulnerabilities. States including California and Florida mandate that probation agreements include clauses permitting random searches by designated authorities. These contractual obligations follow individuals wherever they travel, transforming temporary guests into permanent legal liabilities for unsuspecting hosts. Understanding supervision status before inviting passengers protects entire RV households from unexpected constitutional exposure. Impounded recreational vehicles face comprehensive searches that require neither warrants nor probable cause. Authorities justify these inspections as administrative procedures designed to document belongings and prevent theft disputes between owners and towing agencies. South Dakota versus Opperman provided the 1976 Supreme Court framework authorizing police to methodically catalog impounded vehicle contents. This ruling applies regardless of why your RV was towed. Unpaid parking violations, extended stays in restricted zones, traffic infractions, or arrests all trigger identical search authority. The inspection scope extends far beyond cursory glances. Officers can systematically open every cabinet, examine drawer contents, and investigate storage compartments throughout your mobile residence. What began as property protection transforms into exhaustive documentation of your living space's entire contents. Discovery consequences carry serious weight. Illegal items found during inventory procedures, controlled substances, unauthorized weapons, or improperly stored medications become admissible courtroom evidence despite the search's non-investigative intent. The administrative purpose doesn't shield discovered violations from prosecution. Recreational vehicles' residential features make these searches particularly intrusive, yet courts haven't established meaningful distinctions between standard automobiles and mobile dwellings for inventory purposes. The moment tow hooks engage your RV, constitutional protections dissolve rapidly. Understanding this vulnerability helps travelers recognize how quickly routine towing situations escalate into comprehensive legal exposures affecting their personal belongings and potential criminal liability. Police officers' sensory observations carry substantial legal weight during recreational vehicle encounters. Detecting marijuana or alcohol odors provides sufficient probable cause for warrantless searches across numerous jurisdictions, particularly when your RV operates in vehicle mode rather than residential status. Courts classify these olfactory detections as legitimate evidence, consistently upholding officers' authority to act on perceived scents. United States v. Johns reinforced this principle in 1985, establishing precedent that continues affecting modern travelers despite dramatically changed cannabis laws. The legal landscape grows increasingly complex as state and federal regulations diverge. 24 states have legalized recreational marijuana by 2025, yet federal classification remains unchanged. This jurisdictional conflict enables law enforcement, especially in conservative counties and interstate corridors, to justify searches based on cannabis odor regardless of local legalization status. Subjectivity issues plague odor-based justifications. Scent detection lacks objective measurement, relying entirely on individual officer interpretation. Drug detection canines compound these concerns, alerting to residual traces lingering months after legal consumption or exposure to others' use. Open container odors or burnt cannabis smells can trigger comprehensive inspections encompassing all compartments, storage areas, and personal luggage throughout your mobile residence. These searches proceed without your verbal consent or visible evidence. The perceived odor alone satisfies probable cause requirements under current legal standards. Third-party phone calls to police frequently initiate recreational vehicle investigations without owners' knowledge. Bystanders reporting suspicious activity, extended parking duration, nighttime movement inside vehicles, or unusual behavior provide law enforcement with justification to approach, question, and potentially search your mobile residence. Reasonable suspicion forms the critical threshold. Officers responding to credible reports who observe corroborating details like obscured windows, strange sounds, or unauthorized utility connections can escalate encounters into full searches. Supporting evidence transforms concerned citizen observations into actionable probable cause. Navarrete v. California established in 2014 that anonymous emergency tips justify stops and searches when authorities deem them reliable. This Supreme Court decision means single phone calls from unknown sources can legitimately trigger comprehensive RV inspections, regardless of actual wrongdoing. The frequency surprises most travelers. Tourist destination states process thousands of suspicious vehicle reports annually, with recreational vehicles featuring prominently among investigated cases. Many involve RVs legally parked in residential areas where concerned neighbors simply find their presence unusual or threatening. Innocent circumstances offer limited protection once investigations begin. Brief misunderstandings between your legitimate activities and community perceptions can rapidly evolve into lawful searches examining your entire living space. Understanding how external reports influence law enforcement responses helps RV communities navigate public parking situations more strategically. Municipal and county regulations governing recreational vehicle parking carry consequences extending far beyond simple fines. Violating local codes regarding overnight stays, waste disposal, or duration limits grants officers administrative authority to approach your vehicle, issue citations, and potentially conduct inspections connected to the violation. Regional ordinance variations create hazardous legal terrain for mobile travelers. Los Angeles prohibits vehicle sleeping during nighttime hours, while certain Florida municipalities ban RV street parking completely. These dramatically different local standards make compliance challenging for travelers crossing jurisdictional boundaries regularly. Administrative Inspection Authority allows officers to examine areas directly related to code violations, checking for illegal waste dumping, expired registration tags, or safety compliance issues. This limited scope expands rapidly when inspections reveal contraband, hazardous materials, or concerning conditions that establish probable cause for comprehensive searches. The escalation pattern follows predictable trajectories. Single parking infractions can trigger multi-hour investigations once officers discover additional violations or suspicious circumstances during initial administrative checks. What appeared to be routine enforcement transforms into serious legal exposure. Experienced travelers mitigate these risks through diligent preparation. Maintaining current documentation, researching destination ordinances before arrival, and verifying overnight parking legality protect against cascading consequences. Legal ignorance provides no defense when facing ordinance violations. Local authorities enforce their codes regardless of travelers' familiarity with regional requirements. Partially visible illegal items inside recreational vehicles grant officers instant search authority without requiring warrants or owner consent. Visible pistol grips beneath seats, accessible liquor containers, or suspicious packages on dashboards establish immediate probable cause for comprehensive inspections. Texas v. Brown solidified this principle in 1983, confirming that lawfully positioned officers who clearly identify contraband from their vantage points can seize items and expand searches accordingly. This Supreme Court precedent continues governing countless RV encounters nationwide. Recreational vehicle layouts create unique exposure risks. Living spaces naturally display personal belongings across countertops, partially open drawers, and storage areas. Prescription medications sitting visibly, tools resembling weapons, or everyday items arranged carelessly can trigger officer suspicion and justify deeper investigation. State-specific regulations complicate matters further. Pepper spray, replica firearms, and other non-lethal defensive items carry varying legal statuses across jurisdictions. Officers encountering these objects must assess legality based on local standards, often erring toward caution through expanded searches. The transformation happens remarkably fast. Single visible items, even seemingly innocent objects like forgotten beverage containers, can eliminate privacy protections instantly. Once officers visually confirm potential violations, they gain authority to examine your entire mobile residence systematically. Understanding how visibility converts private spaces into searchable areas helps travelers maintain better control over their legal exposure during routine encounters. Police authority to enter recreational vehicles extends beyond criminal investigations into public safety responsibilities. Officers can legally access your RV when they reasonably believe occupants face danger, medical emergencies, or hazardous living conditions. No warrant required for these protective interventions. Visual and auditory indicators trigger these responses regularly. Smoke-filled interiors, abandoned appearances, loud disturbances, or vehicles idling during extreme temperatures Provide justification for officer approaches and potential forced entry when knocks go unanswered. Western states process thousands of annual welfare inspections targeting RVs in rest areas, retail parking facilities, and remote desert locations. Passerby reports describing motionless occupants frequently initiate these checks, while patrol officers independently identify safety hazards like propane leaks or obstructed emergency exits during routine surveillance. The dual nature creates complex outcomes. Officers entering with genuine protective intent who discover illegal items can immediately pivot from caretakers to investigators. Plain sight contraband observed during safety checks becomes admissible evidence despite the non-criminal entry purpose. Communication and transparency provide protective value in these scenarios. Closed blinds combined with extended silence can paradoxically increase suspicion rather than preserve privacy. Authorities interpret non-responsiveness as potential distress signals warranting intervention, transforming legitimate desire for solitude into circumstances justifying lawful entry and subsequent inspection of your living environment. The law doesn't always knock. Sometimes it just walks in. Do you think RVers deserve stronger privacy protection? Share your thoughts below. And if you want to stay ahead of the rules that could ruin your next road trip, watch our upcoming video, The Hidden RV Laws That Could Cost You Thousands. See you there.